Call the meeting of the Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 House Veterans and Military Affairs Division to order. A quorum is present, and we begin our meetings with a pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Mr. Representative Rapinski, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin our agenda, I want to remind everybody that the division expects proper decorum at all time. All dialogue goes through the chair. Signs are not allowed in the committee room. There will be no outbursts or clapping. There is no standing or sitting in the walkways and aisles. If accommodations are needed, communicate with the sergeant's staff. There will be consequences if there is a disruption. Thank you to the Sergeant at Arms staff who are present in helping us to maintain decorum in the committee room. And Representative Hemmingson-Yager, have you reviewed the minutes? All right. Representative Hemmingson-Yager moves the minutes, the approval of the March 5th, 2025 minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries, and the minutes of the March 5th, 2025 meeting are approved. Quick announcement before we start our stuff. If you notice on your table in front of you, there's some little coins. Those are challenge coins. I don't know if you know what they're for. When you meet with your veterans group back in your home area, you can give them a little gift. They're quite inexpensive when you buy a bunch of them, so they're not a gift that's going to be illegal for you to give. So that's a nice thing, and they may give you one back, and you can start gathering challenge coins. It's a nice thing to have. All right, if you slap your challenge coin or reserve challenge coin, if you slap them on the table and one person doesn't have it, that person buys the round. So that's another option. Was that better?
Yeah, and it goes by rank too. So a member of the House of Representatives just about beats any Minnesota National Guard member, I think.
Oh. All right. On that note, the first bill on our agenda, we're going to move, I think. Oh, Waynes is here. All right. Oh, there he is. He snuck in. First bill on the agenda is House File 1778. Representative Johnson, please come to the testifier table with your testifier. Representative Johnson, since you're not a member of this division, I will move House File 1778 before the division. We'll be laying the bill over. Please explain your bill.
Thank you, Chair Bliss and members of the committee. Today's bill is pretty much along the lines of what we've been working on this year, accountability, making sure that the money is being spent on the people that our intentions are. It's relating to beginning in January 15, 2026, and each year thereafter, the Commissioner of Veterans Affairs must submit a report on organizations that receive grants from the agency in the preceding fiscal year to the chairs and ranking minority members of the Legislative Committee with jurisdiction over veteran affairs, policy, and finance. I have with me today testifying is former Representative Mark Waynes. He carried this last session, and so I'm moving forward with this year.
Colonel Waynes, state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Bliss, Co-Chair Olson, and Lead Zhang. I am a veteran, Mark Waynes from Washington County. Last session, this bipartisan bill was unanimously passed through Veterans and Military Affairs Policy and Finance Committee. It was co-authored by Chair Newton, Vice Chair Elkins, Lead Bliss, and Rep Olson, plus many others. I received great cooperation from the MDVA during the conception of the development of this bill last session, especially from my friend and comrade in arms, the late MDV Commissioner Larry Herkey. May his name and legacy be remembered as just. Our discussions were genuine in that we desired to retain the clean reputation of the MDVA in administering grants. We agreed citizens, taxpayers, and especially veterans must know that what we say and what we do, that it is the trust of those that we have served with. Nothing less will be accepted from our former service members, our comrades, and our veterans. Furthermore, this bill could become an example for other organizations. Larry was fond of saying, better a good story on page 7 than a bad one on page 1. The intent of this bill was to develop success metrics to ensure that we better serve our veterans and keep our promises to them, build our communities, and knowing we are heading in the right direction to accomplish these goals. Chair, fellow committee members, I would greatly appreciate support for HF 1778 to promote accountability, transparency, and effectiveness for assisting our veterans to be restored to their community, their families, and themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weems. Are there any member questions for Representative Johnson or his testifier? Oh, we can't let Mark get out of here that easy. All right, any closing comments, Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Bliss, members. I was proud to bring this forward after talking with former Representative Weems, and I just hope for your support.
Thank you, Representative Johnson and former Representative Weems. House File 1778 is laid over. We're going to jump on the schedule a little bit. And we're going to bring up House File 1997. So the next bill on our agenda is House File 1997. Representative Warwas, please come to the testifier table with your testifiers.
Well, thank you and good morning.
Oh, hold on a second. Representative Warwas, since you're not a member of this division, I move that House File 1997 before the division. We'll be laying the bill over. Please explain your bill.
I appreciate that, Chair. And good morning, Chair and members. My name is Representative Cal Warwas, and I serve the heart of the Iron Range in District 7B, whose major cities include Virginia and Chisholm. I'm just going to start out here. As a first-time member in your presence, I have brought the customary treats. So I want you to know there's still warm from the oven caramel rolls here for my daughter Isabel, who some of you know also works in the House Republican Caucus. So I hope you'll find those both nutritious and delicious this morning. But I'm pleased to bring for your consideration House File 1997, which is a bill that will appropriate money to an organization called Fishing with Vets. And they are doing great work to encourage our veterans, including many that are disabled. I believe all committee members should have a fact sheet that they sent in advance. To date, they have taken over 1,000 veterans on fishing trips, and this is from an organization that has been functioning less than 10 years. And I want to thank members Pete Johnson, Representative Pete Johnson, Zach Stevenson, and Matt Norris for their strong support to make this a bipartisan bill. I know several community members from back home that volunteer their time and equipment, and they have a great deal of respect for Fishing with Vets. They take veterans fishing through this organization. And with me today are Bob Stearns and Ron Knudsen and Jeremy Colson, and I'll let them tell you more about Fishing with Vets.
Thank you. Please state your name before you begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Stearns. I'm the Director of Operations for Fishing with Vets. Chair Bliss and committee members, thank you for hearing from us today. The fact sheet kind of took away basically everything that I talk about by just presenting it to you on a piece of paper. It takes care of all the nuts and bolts and finances of the organization. So instead of talking about all that stuff, I'll be letting you guys just look at it. And I'd like to talk about my experiences with the organization. I've been part of Fishing with Vets since 2018. As a board member, in 2017, I volunteered, brought my ice castle fish house and a boat on 2 separate trips and just helped out and hosted vets with myself. 2018, I joined the board, and in 2022, I became the Director of Operations. My history with the organization has been nothing short of fantastic. It's been a lot of fun expanding our operation from 7 trips in 2018 to currently this year, we're scheduled to do 22 trips, 80 to 100 veterans a year in 2018 to approximately 250 this year. It'll be close depending on numbers of veterans available on each trip. With that expansion comes added cost. With that added cost comes added fundraising and different sources. As you can see on our sheet, we do a couple fundraisers a year, one right in the heart of the Iron Range in Chisholm, Minnesota called Mudfest. It's a 9/11 Memorial ATV ride. It's a huge community event. The city of Chisholm always turns out and does great things for this organization. And every penny we raise there goes right back to the veterans in the state that we serve. We do a softball tournament in Wadena. The Senate is planning on putting a team together, so step up, guys. I think they were gonna add it to the bill, actually, that they had to. So if we'd like to, we'd love to have you all. And then we have a sponsorship program that generated approximately $30,000. The rest of it is just straight donations from businesses, individuals, companies throughout the state that just believe in what we do. We've put our resources to good use. We try to be very fiscally responsible. As you can see on our sheet, we have no paid positions at all throughout the organization. Our legal team is pro bono. Our accountant is our treasurer, and he does that free of charge. We try to be as responsible with the money as we can. And as you can see in our bill, we are asking for $25,000 in 2026 as well as 2027. Those funds would go to help expand our trip base. With that, we would like to take $5,000 and encourage our members to get some training dealing with mental health crisis. Because as our trips expand and our number of veterans served expand, the number of needs for mental health awareness and response grows every single year. So we'd like to set aside a little bit of that money to give us a little better training in handling situations like that. We also utilize the Vet Center. We have a great relationship with the Vet Center in Duluth as well as Fargo. We have representatives from that organization come on our trips, talk about mental health crises, talk about available options for the veterans. So our trips aren't all about fishing. That's the biggest thing we want to talk about. It's the means we use to get our word out, but we also really encourage our veterans to spend a lot of time focusing on camaraderie, making new friends, expanding relationships, and taking advantage of resources that might just be available to them that they didn't know about. So it is all about fishing in the name, but the mission is to build relationships with other veterans, make new friends, and Ron will testify about how that works. Jeremy Colson's our president. He was a founder of the organization, and in 2014, he got things started. 2015, we were incorporated. He'll talk about the history of the organization, where we started and where we are now, and a few of our, I guess, more exciting events that we've done. So I'll hand it over to Jeremy, President of Fishing with Vets.
Thank you. Please state your name before you begin your testimony.
Jeremy Colson, President of Fishing with Vets. Thank you, Chairman Bliss, fellow committee members. I've actually been here since day one. I've seen this organization grow from basically an open seat where somebody would post on Facebook saying they have a spot available for a veteran to join us, and they would go fishing for the day. Eventually, some fishing guides figured out what we were doing, and they started doing a veteran +1 fishing trip for them. Eventually, money started to come in, $5 here, $10 here, $20, $100. We saved our pennies and did our first trip in 2015 on Lake of the Woods, where we brought 10 veterans out there. As anybody understands, running a nonprofit, it's hard to get going. We did successfully, but it was kind of the funny aspect is going up to Lake of the Woods, and I have a credit card for the organization, my own personal one. Sometimes that's what we had to do to make things work to get this organization running, is we spent our own money to take care of veterans. And how this organization actually came upon us was, there was Ice Fishing Minnesota on Facebook. There was a veteran on there that had gear that was old, it was getting dilapidated, and he just kind of expressed, like, he basically just said, my stuff's getting worn out, this is my passion, I'm a veteran that lives on disability. And eventually what happened is a bunch of people got together and got him a bunch of equipment and some money to go buy some new stuff. And myself and two other guys, we sat there and said, we need to do something for veterans. And that's where we are now. Like I said, stated earlier, it was an open seat to guides giving trips to a veteran +1 to what we do now. And we're doing 21 trips this year, as Bob explained earlier, 250 veterans going out. What this organization means to me is the camaraderie is number one. And I think the best story I think I have is my wife is gonna be an example of this. She always thought that we'd go on these trips and it was a means for us to hang out with a bunch of veterans and we'd drink some beers and go fishing and tell tall tales of our service. And she actually joined me one year, and I was not an intended guide for this trip, fishing guide. And we got a phone call from a lady that was up in Baudette, Minnesota, saying her husband really needed a weekend away. So we said, okay. Bob was the one that actually fielded that call, and he came up to me and said, hey, you okay having this veteran join you? And I'm, of course, absolutely. Not to get into specifics about the gentleman that was in the boat with us. He went a lot of tours, a lot of hardships. He was mentally in a hard spot, and we talked, laughed, hugged each other, cried. And the funny thing is we got done with that trip and we're driving home and my wife starts crying. She's like, I just thought you literally just sat around and drank beer all the time and had fun and told war stories. She's like, I never understood what you guys actually can deal with. Is this every trip? Certainly not. Is it every veteran? Absolutely not. The fact is there's still a lot of people out there struggling. And sometimes it's all they need is just a weekend away. Hang out with friends, brothers, sisters. And it's just an opportunity. That's what we try to provide. I think some of the other touching things that we see is our Vietnam veterans. We all know the history of that. And a lot of those gentlemen, a lot of those ladies really appreciate the opportunity. They didn't come home to this. So we try to give a lot of appreciation to our Vietnam veterans. We have Ron Knutson here, so okay. He's a veteran that's been on a trip with us before, and he's gonna give his testimony of what it's like to be a veteran on a trip with Fishing with Vets. Thank you again for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Please state your name before you begin your testimony.
Ron Knutson. Good morning, Chair Bliss and other chair members. What an honor. Kind of hard because I'm not here for me. What this group has done, you know, being asked to come here and knowing how professional this group is, I was wondering, what do I wear? And the one thing that always was precious to me was my uniform. I don't have that anymore. But what I have now is this jersey. And I wear it with so much pride because the number on the back shows 22. And that 22 is the number of veterans that don't make it through the day. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for this group, I think I would have became number 22. About 3 years ago, I lost everything in my life. My son had to make a horrible decision. We either amputate your dad's leg or he loses his life. And he made that decision. And he walked out of my life. Because he can't face me because of what I am now. So I lost him and I lost a grandson at the same time. I don't have any parents. And then I went through a divorce. So now I'm sitting at home watching the paint dry. reached out to the VA and they're like, try to get counseling and everything else. And they said, you know, there are groups that you can get in contact with. So I just punched up fishing with a vet. And I got in touch with these guys. And I tell you what, so many years that fire down inside me lay dormant because I was not close to my brothers and sisters. And if you go on any of the websites, especially these, and you look at the photos and you see the smiles, it's not because they caught that fish. It's because for 6 or 8 hours, we got to be back with our brothers and sisters again, reliving what was so important in our life. Jeremy and I found out 2 weeks ago, sitting outside the Senate hearing doors. We were stationed over in Okinawa, Japan. In 1997 and 98. Never even knew it. Today I'm having breakfast in the hotel and a gentleman walks up and says, "Fishing with the Vets?" I said, "Yep." He said, "I know all about it because I've been on that trip." What a great organization. I wear this sweatshirt with so much pride. And our country's starting to change because I'll wear it and somebody will come up and they'll pat me on the back and say, "Thank you for your service." I've had a little boy come over and say, "Thank you for your service." But the one that really gets me is the one that puts their hand on my shoulder and says, "Thanks, brother." And I know what that means because he was a vet or she was a vet. This funding, you guys have no idea what it can do, but it could possibly save another number like it did me. I thank you for your time. I'm sorry for this. I didn't intend that whatsoever, but I truly believe they saved me.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the testifiers or the bill author? Representative Clardy.
Not on. Not really a question, but I wanted to thank you for bringing this bill forward. I have a bunch of veterans in my family, and I know the importance of what you've done and what, what your life experience has taught you, and that you're sharing your own personal stories. Without these personal stories, it's harder to make a connection of the value of an organization, but hearing the two stories that we heard just reaffirms why we should fund this. Thank you.
Representative Ray Rowe.
Chair, I'm just wondering if we can break the rules and if we could stand and applaud. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Representative Warwas, final words.
I just really appreciate everyone for your time today and your attention and just the way everyone has so warmly taken to the mission of Fishing with Vets. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Warwas. House File 1997 is laid over. Let's see. Okay. The next bill on our agenda is House File 1225. Representative Skraba, please come to the table with your testifier. Representative Skraba, since you are not a member of this division, I will move that House File 1225 before the division with a recommendation it is re-referred to the Environment and Natural Resource Finance and Policy Committee. Representative Skraba, please begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair and members. Every time I come to this committee, I get worked up. You need a box of Kleenex here. I don't know why, but they're so emotional whenever I come to these hearings. The sacrifices that we all make. And I'm a veteran, so I don't know why I just get so worked up here. Thank you. I'm here today. If a veteran could take an ATV and not think about taking their life, this is worth it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The bill is gonna waive the vehicle registration fees for veterans with 100% total and permanent disability. The veterans, obviously, it's not a large group of people that are in that group, so it's not gonna really hurt our economy and anything like that. But again, I think it's something that we as a society could look at this and say, hey, if they can take a rig, get a rig and go riding and bring peace and parity back. I don't know what else to say. The bill is supported by the Minnesota Chapter of Disabled Veterans of America. It's also supported by ATVAM, the organization that gets all ATVers together. And I think you have a letter from ATVAM. That's about it, but I just want to apologize. I can't help but get worked up. Anyway, yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's right. Questions, Vice Chair Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Skraba, I just want to ask a clarifying question here. You are in fact a Army veteran, correct?
Hoorah. 19 Delta, 11 Bravo.
Perfect. So, Mr. Chair, I believe that the Army guys outnumber the Marines and the Navy here.
Yeah. It's because it takes two of you to meet one of us. Any other questions for Representative Skraba?
I do want to clarify, you know what a grunt stands for, right? Ground replacement, usually not trained.
Okay.
That came from World War I, and that is not the case today. Marines are some of the best trained fighters in the world.
We are generally a nonpartisan commission here, but inter-divisional jabs are fine. No more questions. Representative Skraba, do you have any final words?
I just think this is a great opportunity to help the veterans, the few that are there, and I don't think it's asking much for the people of Minnesota to do this.
Thank you. I renew my motion to recommend that House File 1225 is re-referred to the Environment and Natural Resource Committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is it mine now? Yep, it's yours. The last bill on our agenda is House File 840. This is my bill. Vice Chair Olson, will you please take the gavel?
Well, Chair Bliss, since you are a member of this committee, would you like to move your own bill?
I would, please.
Perfect. I understand that we'll be laying over House File 840 today. Would you please begin your testimony?
Thank you. House File 840 simply removes the costs for burial fees for spouses of veterans in state cemeteries. Currently, a veteran is eligible for burial in a state cemetery. His wife can be buried, or his or her spouse could be buried next to them, but there would be a fee associated with that. We think that since the spouse has put up with the veterans for as long as they have, they deserve to be buried with honors at our expense as well. It's not that expensive. There is a fiscal note in your packet, and that's about it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any testifiers in the room who would like to testify on this issue? Could you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Cole Trace, and I am the Government Affairs Liaison for the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. And with me is Dave Swantek, our Deputy Director of Memorial Affairs. He is joining me for this bill. I'd first like to touch on the burial fee, which is currently set at $978 for spouses and eligible dependents. This is based on the non-service connected burial allowance set by the Veterans Benefits Administration within the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Most of Minnesota's neighboring states have similar fees for spouses and eligible dependents. This fee allows MDVA to deliver this level of service needed in our state veteran cemeteries. Secondly, given that the proposed language without a corresponding appropriation, the MDVA understands the offset of the spouse eligible dependent burial fee is expected to come from the Support Our Troops funds. SOT funds come from the sale of the Support Our Troops license plates. As this revenue is dependent on license plate sales, funding fluctuates from year to year. Despite a cumulative increase in receipts between fiscal year 18 through 24, MDVA has experienced periods of decreased receipt revenue and cannot rely on this source of funding to offset the loss of burial fees. Currently, what we use this SOT funds for include grants to veteran service organizations like the VFW, American Legion, outreach to underserved veterans, providing services and programs for veterans and their families, which I think the Fishing for Veterans bill could possibly fit under. Transfers, so I would encourage that group to apply if they're still here. Anyways, transfers to the driver and vehicle services operating account for Gold Star license plates, grants of up to $100,000 to any organization approved by the commissioner for the purpose of supporting and improving the lives of veterans and their families, and grants to an eligible foundation, as well as the burial fee for uncompensated costs as the commissioner grants. Additionally, there are a number of yearly commitments that MDVA must account for regarding administration of the SOT funding, to include costs of Support Our Troops advertising, statewide system costs, as well as funding to maintain the Veterans Linkage Line, also known as LinkVet, which is a 24/7 confidential crisis support service that helps Minnesota veterans and their families find benefits and resources via phone, chat, and email. If the offset to the loss of spouse and eligible dependent burial fees is to be pulled from the SOT funds, as it currently is in the bill, MDVA projects that a significant portion of the SOT funds will be solely committed to cover the elimination of these burial fees in future years and will no longer be available for the other 6 categories that I mentioned. So we ask that this bill, if it is to continue in the process, that an appropriation is funded for the offset of the burial fee elimination. The fiscal note puts the offset level at about $828,000 for this biennium and over $1 million into future fiscal years. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Dave Swantek, who will talk about what we use the burial fees for.
Thank you for your testimony. Would you please state your name for the record and continue?
Yeah, Chair, members, good morning. My name is David Swantek. I'm the Deputy Director of Memorial Affairs for MDVA. Currently, the fee that we charge for spouses, it's deposited into a special revenue fund that we call our Cemetery Maintenance and Development Account. That fund it was established about 30 years ago when the cemetery in Little Falls first came into operation, and it was intended to be used for exactly what it's called, maintenance and development. Unfortunately, our cemeteries until this biennium have never been fully funded, and so we've had to use those burial fees to support salary costs and other operational needs of our cemetery. This is the first biennium where we were able to use that revenue to support our capital improvement program, which replaces aging equipment, maintenance to our facilities and sites. And it's the first time we've been able to fully execute some purchases to replace equipment and do some other expenditures to maintain our facilities, even though some of our cemeteries are relatively new. Little Falls has been in operation for 30 years, and we've needed to start replacing some of our equipment. And so that gives you an idea of the importance of these fees and what they're used for in our day-to-day operations.
Thank you for testimony. Are there anyone else who would like to testify on this bill? Please come on up and state your name for the record and continue with your testimony as soon as you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Barry Henriksen, Department of Minnesota Veterans of Wars Adjutant Quartermaster. The SOT grants from the MDVA are crucial to the operations of the VFW, American Legion, so forth. Our budget shortfalls as our membership declines. That grant from the MDVA helps us pay for our service team that's out at the Veterans Service Building that do claims for veterans for no charge, part of the claim sharks. So that grant that we get annually is critical to our operations at the Department of Minnesota Veterans of Foreign Wars. And I'm sure the American Legion and the other organizations would say the same thing. So please, that SOT grant is critical to our operations. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any further testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on to questions of the chair or any of the previous testifiers. Mr. Chair, I have a quick question for you. Maybe you can clarify something for me. I believe that any qualified service member or veteran and their spouse and their minor dependents are eligible for burial in national cemeteries.
In the federal system, yes.
In the federal system. Okay, so the state of Minnesota will not allow a veteran's spouse to be buried for free next to their service member, but on a national level in a federal cemetery, we cover the cost. Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions of the committee? Almost co-chair, Zhang.
Next week.
Next week, almost co-chair Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to the testifier, Mr. Trace. You mentioned that to see this bill through, there will be a cost of $828 plus one something. Would that be the amount that you would need to see this bill to move forward? Can you give me the total?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or almost co-chair Zhang. We would be supportive of this bill if the appropriation matched. So the fiscal note states that it would be $828,000 for this current fiscal year that will be budgeted, and then over $1 million into future bienniums. So if the appropriation is there, we could get behind and support this bill.
Any further, I have a further question. So you're believing that it's going to cost $1 million worth of spouses are going to want to be buried in our state cemeteries?
That is what the offset would be, yeah. So that
Every year?
Yeah.
Or every 2 years?
Biennium, yes.
There's a lot of spouses being buried in state cemeteries. Any further questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chair, would you like to close out your bill?
Thank you, and we'll just be laying this over for negotiations and budget. So I appreciate your support and your testimony, and thank you very much.
And with that, the House file is laid over.
Thanks.
Oh. Mr. Chair, can I adjourn this meeting?
You may.
All right, and with that, we're adjourned.